It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Travis Penfield, founder and CEO of 49 Financial. Travis graduated Magna Cum Laude from Texas A&M University in 2011 with a degree in finance. He joined Deloitte Consulting before starting his career as a financial advisor at AXA Advisors. While at AXA, Travis broke all the records in hiring, retention, and development, and his emerging leaders were hired primarily as new college graduates. In 2019, Travis transitioned that group from AXA to 49 Financial and now has over 250 advisors nationwide. The entire business model is based on the firm's motto, two are better than one, from Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9, which says, two are better than one, for they get a better return for their labor. Travis lives in Austin, Texas with his wife, Jacqueline, their daughters, Charlotte and Olivia, and their golden doodle, Duncan. In his spare time, you can find Travis playing with his girls, playing golf, catching a Peloton ride, or enjoying wine and good food. Travis Jordan Penfield, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
It's great to have you here and great to catch up a couple of minutes before we got started today. We're just after the Thanksgiving holiday. This is probably going to be released in a few weeks out. So how's your turkey belly doing? Let's start with that.
Turkey belly is good. Had plenty of it. Yeah, kind of a odd
all the leftovers gone for now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank God the pie is finally gone.
Oh, yes. That's the one that adds all the waste. Now, you said you had kind of a small gathering this year.
We did. That include? Yeah. It's, with everything going on, we ended up just being my wife and my two girls. Both are actually under the age of 2. So we had our hands full. So small gathering, but a loud gathering.
Small but a loud gathering. Well, that's terrific. And, obviously you mentioned about interesting times where how many months has it been, or has it been years we've been in this pandemic?
I know.
I just can't believe it. How are you holding up? How's your team, family, greater family, and doing during these, somewhat challenging times?
Yeah. I mean, we've been blessed in that everyone's been safe. I think that's been, business and personal been the theme. And I know that's not everybody. And then, I think, with great challenges and really just disruptions in general to the natural flow, we've been challenged in areas to adapt and learn new rhythms, professionally and personally. And I think now, whatever we're in, 9 months into this thing,
Are we 9? I think it's that, right? 9 or 10. I can't remember.
I think in some ways you start to see, if I can say positives that can come out of something so negative.
Yes.
If you look for it.
Look for the bright side. Well, that's great. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear all are safe. We always like to start the podcast, just hearing a little bit about the early years, where you grew up and what your early family life was like. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So was actually born outside of Chicago.
Okay. Chicago boy.
Yeah. And I'm told that I touched Michael Jordan's hand. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that's important
great.
to know.
Was your father a basketball fan, or
he
your mom?
He was a basketball fan. And when I was growing up, I told all my friends, there's 3 reasons why I'm going to be Michael Jordan. I was born on February 23rd. My middle name is Jordan, and I'm born in Chicago. So,
and you touched his hand as a kid.
And I touched his hand. So maybe there's 4 reasons, Brett. There you go. But so moved when I was a young kid to San Antonio, Texas, and I had actually a wonderful upbringing. So I'm one of the stories that there wasn't just an amazing amount of drama. In fact, it was kind of, me, my older brother, my younger sister, grew up in a Christian home, went to actually a private Christian school. And, for that, the more that I live and get to talk to people, a very calm upbringing, one that I, got a lot of support and was really raised under the right principles, the right direction. And obviously that's stayed with me, throughout my adult life.
What did mom and dad do? Mom work in the home with the kids, or is she outside? Dad?
So she was actually a corporate woman. So USAA,
cool.
big bank insurance. She 30 something years there, and, rose at different levels. And what I so admire about her there is, she actually retired and had her going away Zoom. What an odd time to retire, right?
Oh, goodness. So she retired during the pandemic.
And to hear the impact that she had, not just on the people in a business perspective, but how many of them from a faith perspective were strengthened. She was known probably more for the Bible studies she led than the corporate meetings she led. So, wonderful woman, look up to her in so many ways. Then my father was more the entrepreneur.
Okay.
So he had a medical sales company, and he still kind of dabbles in it. But funny enough, I don't think I'd have been on the path I'm on had I not had a fear of blood, because he, I told him in college, I said, why can't I just take this thing over? That'd be easy. And I remember him describing to me a day in surgery. And I got so woozy that I said,
this is an inserted medical device, right?
That's right.
Inside the body. Oh, gosh.
And I was like, okay, I don't think this is right for me. I'm going to study finance.
Oh, that's too funny. I love it. Was dad kind of stay at home then and kind of more looked after the kids?
Yeah. So, the joy of the entrepreneur, and I think that's where, in a lot of ways, I got to see it, is, he didn't really miss taking us to school, picking us up. He made his own, hours, and in a lot of ways, he was in every sporting event and all of that, while still did tremendously well at his job. And so I think that gave me a pretty good example of, wow, if you want to take that bold, risky route of entrepreneurship, there are side benefits to it.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you mentioned you grew up in a Christian home, so I'm assuming your parents both were at the time that you were born, or your brothers and sisters. And
all of them, Christian. And I think for me, my journey, funny enough, is I said the prayer, like we say, to have salvation when I was 5 after seeing a skit at Trinity Baptist Church in San Antonio, but it didn't materialize. I would say it didn't really mean something to me until I was 17. And frankly, I think when you're growing up in a Christian home, you go to a Christian school where there's Bible class every day and chapel on Thursdays. You go to youth group on Tuesday nights and church and youth group on Sundays. I think that
you're pretty integrated.
You are. And I think that while I knew a lot of the answers, I actually didn't come to have a real, I would say, Travis and Jesus faith until 17.
Yeah. Well, tell me about some of the folks that inspired you along the way. Obviously mom and dad, any specific things about them? You've mentioned, of course, the work ethic and, mom's great way of sharing. But, older brother, sister, other people in the church, pastors, coaches, tell us a little bit about those that might have kind of given you a little bit of a shove or a push or encouragement along the way.
Yeah, I think that my parents, one of the things, I was kind of a wild child. Let's just put it out there. And so I think for them to be able to know where I needed to be unbridled, if you will, in my personality, I think that was so much wisdom and led to ultimately who I am, because I was able to mature in the areas that obviously I needed to, and still have such a long way to go, obviously.
Right.
But they did a great job in that, where I think it would have been an easier route to just kind of say, just don't do this, or don't pursue this, or that's going to not work out, or whatever. Like letting me fail, I think was super helpful. And then, I had a coach actually when I was in high school that, I think that I had always, had big dreams and aspirations of what I could become, but it was always me focused. And it was the first person that I actually saw that I would say made faith look cool.
Cool.
And he had such a big impact, because before then I thought it was kind of this staunchy, Baptist background.
Right. It was a Christian school, I'm assuming you went to a Baptist school. Yeah.
That's right. And I think that coach kind of helped me understand that, I could make my faith my own. And then, I think, I had a few mentors, a couple people that were CEOs of businesses that I got to sit with them weekly when I was a senior in high school to just hear how'd they do it. Now that they have sold businesses, and had successes, what do they think now? What have they learned? What do they see in me? And so I think that some of those business people really exposing me to what life could be in 10, 20, 30 years, I think got my appetite for entrepreneurship.
Right. That's cool. So coach, I'm assuming basketball.
Funny enough, basketball is what I played. It was actually a soccer coach. I got somehow roped into being the goalie, which if you ever asked me to kick a ball, you'd be like, now, how are you the goalie? I don't think you deserve that position.
Well, at least you could use your hands like you do in basketball, right?
That's exactly right. Sense. I just said, hey, listen, I'm 6'4". I've got a pretty big wingspan.
There you go.
Just let the ball hit me in the face,
Yeah.
But yeah, he was tremendous.
Were you a good student in, elementary, middle school, high school?
Yeah, I've always had, if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm about as atypical of a 3 as you're going to find.
Okay.
And so that goes back there where if I see something that I can achieve that will give me recognition and almost affirmation, I'm going to go after that. And grades to me were this simple way of checking this box of I'm doing well. And so, I never really struggled with them because I always focused on it because I think it helped me, continue to kind of fill this. Okay, you're good, Travis. You're good.
Yeah, sure. What about other pursuits other than sports and school? Involved in music? Did you have a chess club? Were there other things that you were involved with in those early years?
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of back to this idea of entrepreneurship. So when I was a kid, there was a new gaming console called the Sega Dreamcast.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I remember that.
It came out with Sonic the Hedgehog game.
That's right.
I'm a kid and I go to my dad and I'm like, hey, I want to get this console. And he's like, well, I'm not going to get it for you. I'm like, well, why not? And he's like, well, because you haven't earned it and you don't need it. And he said, but I'll give you my lawnmower. And so I literally took his lawnmower. I mowed his lawn, took a picture with the Polaroid of his lawn and knocked on all of my neighbors' doors, showed him the Polaroid and said, do you want your lawn to look this way?
Oh, I love it. That's great.
I said, whatever you're getting, charged, I'll do $5 left. And, before I knew it, I had a little bit of a business going there in the neighborhood.
That's great. What was your hit rate? Of the 10 you'd go to and you'd show the picture and knock $5 out. Would you do 10 out of 10 or 8 out of 10?
It was high. It wasn't 10 out of 10, but I think as I reflect now, this scrawny kid coming up, showing a picture clearly of his parents' yard.
Wonderful case study.
Yeah, I think it was almost like,
Yeah, we got to give him a shot. Come on, Charles.
That's exactly
let him go. Let him go do it.
That's exactly right.
Any other entrepreneurial things? It sounds like obviously your dad's influence there played a little part.
Oh yeah, I almost was going to actually not go to Texas A&M, and I was going to drop out to actually start. I had a family friend, one of those entrepreneurs that mentored me, that had a cigar business of all things.
Gosh.
And I kind of learned it and understood it. And thank God for my mother who shut it down and said, I'm not having my 18-year-old son smoke cigars all the time just because he wants to have a business pursuit. So tried that one. I tried when, the froyo, was going crazy.
Oh, yeah, sure. Frozen yogurt.
Yeah, it was nuts. I actually went to New York and I saw a cupcakery and I go to it and I'm like, this is unbelievable. And I had this whole plan that I was going to go to a bunch of small college towns and do kind of the froyo model and open it up everywhere, make it pretty and try to sell it in 3 years. And luckily my wife's dad, because I had actually already asked him if I could marry his daughter. He said, if you do that cupcake thing and you don't take the job in consulting, I'm not letting you marry her.
I'm not withdrawing my approval.
That's right.
I love that. That's
thank
great.
God
that was incentive. That was incentive.
Oh, and I wanted to marry her. Gosh. So yeah, a lot of failed entrepreneurship efforts along the way.
I love that. So Texas A&M, great school. And it looks like you actually began at Deloitte before you left. Is that right? Did you do some interning with them? Yeah. And that led to something full time. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, well, so I did the internship, and the honest truth was when it came down to finding a full-time job, I
Yeah.
was so in love with my girlfriend, now wife, that I said, I have got to find a job that has the highest signing bonus because I've got to get a ring,
That's
And
right.
if you know Texas
Motivation once
A&M,
again.
oh yeah, I mean it's kind of the norm. You get married at
Right.
22 if you come out of that school. And so I actually made my decision, not wise at all, but yes, I love the idea of consulting and the idea of traveling, seeing different industries, but really it was a signing bonus to get married. And yeah, I mean when I started, I was traveling around everywhere. I mean, I had stints in
Sure.
Germany and Amsterdam and Canada and all these places. And, what was so interesting though is Jacqueline and I, my wife, in our first month of marriage, post the honeymoon, I actually only saw her for 2 days.
Oh, goodness.
And
Wow.
and I knew that was kind of that lifestyle. So it's not as if I wasn't given those expectations. But,
Sure.
I'll never forget, Brant, I was sitting in a Pittsburgh hotel looking over the beautiful downtown. It's, 10 o'clock. I had never walked in snow before, so my leather shoes were torn to pieces. And I sit out there and I look out and I just think to myself, I'm not the type of person that's built to do this. Just almost a sadness really came over of, I'm a community guy.
You've been on the road. You've been on the road too long. Yeah.
And so I think that's when, I always say I did what any good millennial will do. And I called my parents and I said,
Dad, I need to pivot. What am I going to do?
Right. I said, is it okay that I don't like this? And of course, back to, their wonderful parents kind of encouraging me
of course,
no, you shouldn't do it then. And even though great company, and, they gave me all the expectations, it just wasn't the right fit for me.
Right. Well, you spent about almost 8 years with AXA Advisors. That's where you went next. And the last half of that's a little different. We'll talk about that and how you transitioned, because that's kind of an interesting story. But what made you choose them? Obviously, it was Austin based, right? So you weren't traveling anymore. But it sounded like that's a pretty big pivot, right? From being a technology analyst to a financial professional. Tell us what, thought process went through with that one.
Yeah, I mean, great question.
Other than calling mom and dad, which,
that's right.
Of course.
Mom and dad started it. But no, I mean, I think that it was interesting as I talked to a bunch of friends. I loved in college being able to mentor freshmen and sophomore guys, hear what's going on in their life, and then try to create kind of almost like a game plan of accountability for them.
Right.
And of course, like I said, I'm a finance major, love numbers. The whole, take over my dad's business didn't work out. I
for good reason.
That's right. And so, it was kind of this interesting when someone said, that a financial advisor uses numbers and they sit down and just try to help people hold accountable to goals. And I said, well, those are the two things I love. And I wasn't even pursued to do that because when you've got good grades in finance these days, you're hounded by consulting investment banking firms. You don't even have a chance, to even see those things because they're just all over you to join them. Right. And so I think really the honest answer of why I joined was a guy named Jeff Davidson. He was my interview, and I'd interviewed, with a couple of different firms, and I had this, big idea of some of the things I'd even been exposed to at Deloitte as far as how some of the financial planning worked at Fortune 500 companies that, I had some real interest in, and that entrepreneurship bug was coming back. But, Jeff interviewed me, and here was a guy that had tremendous success, 10, 11 years older than me. Right. But, the final interview was so unique. Everyone else talked to me about the money I was going to make and all these things. And his final interview was literally, I want to mentor you to create one of the largest financial firms the world will ever see. And secondarily, I really want to mentor you and ask you through the years we spend together, how's your marriage? How's your faith? How are these things? And, Brant, for me, what a foreign concept.
Jeff's a believer.
Yes.
I take it.
And what a foreign concept coming from an environment where not only did we not talk about those things, but we were so on the road that there was no time to talk about, how I was doing with my spouse because I never seen her. There was no time of it was the part.
It's laughable, but it's sad.
It
right,
is,
Travis?
yeah. And it was partner track, and this is where you'll be in 20 years versus him saying the world is open.
Where are you today? Yeah. World spinning around. Oh, that's great. And you kind of transition. Now, tell us a little bit about how 49 Financial kind of evolved out of AXA, because I see that for most of your time there, right, you built up the team. We talked about that in your bio.
Yeah.
And these are people that you manage then? Is that how that works within that organization? And tell us about how that transitioned to becoming an independent company. That was a little curious to me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So started there with them and, started to develop my own, clientele and serving and loving on clients and solving their problems.
Right.
And then, my mentor kind of said, hey, listen, I've been in all of the meetings with you. What if you
This is Jeff again.
This is Jeff.
Right? Yeah.
What if you did that for other people? And I said, well, I'd love to do that. I'd love to mentor. And that kind of scratched that itch, if you will, of that mentorship I'd always loved to do. So, Brand, I just started hiring people under the idea of, hey, this is what Jeff did for me. Here's been the results. And, let me look to hire you. And it just exploded. And by 2016, we became the top group, in the nation. And that was at record timing and record
within
numbers.
AXA.
Yeah. And I'm just a kid,
and this is the first time you started managing people too,
that's right?
Because you didn't have it previously. Wow.
Yeah. I was 26 years old.
And how many folks were on your team by that time?
I would say, I don't know, 30, maybe 40.
That's incredible.
Young advisors. And it was then brought to me, Jeff said, Travis, you're going to have to come up with a name, because this idea of just, you bringing people under Penfield and AXA, it's not going to really scale. And I agreed. And he said, a buddy of mine 10 years ago had heard a sermon on Ecclesiastes 4:9. And always thought the coolest financial firm name would be 49 Financial, but nothing ever materialized. We never were able to grow a big enough group for it to even really be a thing. But if you would entertain it, I know that you love the Bible, you love everything in there. But our thought was really what is now manifested in reality of what you're doing, which is the idea that two are better than one because you get a better return for your labor.
Right.
So. Right. What if in finance, known for lone wolfing and eat what you kill and greed and ego?
Greed is good.
That's right.
Right. Yeah.
What if we did it together and we had two advisors on every client interaction? And what if you actually took that model and scaled it out to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of advisors? And 4 years before, we were in an interview talking about me starting something big, and all of a sudden it seemed like it was just this perfect alignment. And I said, I'm going to take that name and we're going to build something. And what was crazy, Brant, is 2017 we have that name and still connected with AXA, but
you established it within AXA, right?
And tripled the performance. We tripled in revenue and headcount and all of these things. And it was very clear to me, oh my goodness, there's a lot of other people that understand the value of the idea of two are better than one. Which is really synonymous for what? Community.
That's right.
I mean, that's all it is. But we're all, especially in the pandemic, it seems like we're escalating quickly away from even knowing what community is and the benefits it is and how as humans we need it. But, as we started to progress and grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger, what happened, Brent, is we tried so hard and, hats off to the leadership at AXA. I mean, we tried very hard, hours upon hours of trying to figure it out to see could it work. But, I think simply put, what ended up occurring was it was very clear that if you get big enough inside of an organization like that, you no longer become kind of the golden child, the golden pony of, follow Travis. You should do everything he says, but you actually turn into becoming a threat. Which is so interesting. And so, in my last maybe year there, I just kind of gotten that feeling that, wait a second, my sheer performance is threatening this business model and it's making it a very awkward situation. And, when you get big enough, a lot of the things you're doing operationally speaking, are yours, and you need people to do and execute your own systems and things that don't align maybe with the enterprise. And so for all of those reasons, it kind of just bubbled up to a point where it became very obvious. And I took the big leap.
Last October, right? So
last
not
October.
Even just barely over a year. And
that's right.
Was it amicable, or were you able to do it in such a way that, you guys shake hands and parted friends, so to speak?
I think that as we look at it today, I would hope that would be what would be said on both sides. I think that because of the amount of time and effort and energy that had been spent in trying to make that work. And then the very clear things that just showed that it would not work. And frankly, the partnership just wasn't aligned in a lot of areas. It had its headwinds, I'll say.
Right. I can imagine.
It maybe wasn't as clean, as I think anyone would think. But in reality, looking back, I don't know that it could have been different. Right. It is almost what it is.
Well, let's take a little bit of a sidetrack now. Now, we are both members of a group C12. C12, for those of our listeners that don't know, is a international peer advisory forum for Christian-owned businesses. I've been involved since 2017. I was part of the membership and the establishment of the group in Connecticut. Where did you join, and when did you get involved?
Yeah, so I joined. Actually, I'm at my 2-year anniversary, I think, right now.
Yeah.
And so joined 2 years ago. And
so you were at AXA, right? You were still at AXA at the time, or
I was, yes.
Yeah.
Which talk about a pretty amazing, group as C12 when you go through the transition I went through to have a bunch of other business owners just giving you advice and wisdom. And what a godsend.
Right. Yeah. And how has it been for you? How have you found these last couple of years? Has it been something really helpful in terms of growing your business and figuring out how to go about managing people? Because you must be larger now, right? I'm sure you've added additional staff since you were at AXA, or have you kind of slowed it down a little bit due to the pandemic?
No, we have grown at very, very rapid paces. That's a part of our business model. Right. But C12, what I think that they provide, it's this unique time where you can actually sit with people far better than you at business and hear about their experiences, but in a way that is so vulnerable and honest that then allows you to have a safe place to say, here's what I'm struggling with. Here's the decisions I have to make. And then people immediately coming in saying, oh, I've got you, and in some ways, not to put it back to 49, but the best way I can describe C12 for me and anyone that I know that's been a part of it is it almost takes this whole two are better than one of we need each other. And if you keep reading that scripture, woe to the person that falls that doesn't have someone to pick him up. That's kind of what C12 does is we all fall and we get each other's backs and pick each other up.
Well, I kind of refer to them as my board of non-executive directors, right? Those people that can provide advice and counsel, and there's a lot of humility in the room. No one's got any hidden agendas. They're just really there to give you that honest truth. And it's been obviously tremendous for my business too. Well, scripture is in your name. So, asking about how Christ was involved in your business is a little superfluous, but how does that play out, and from a cultural standpoint? Do you guys take your mom's example and have Bible studies in the office? Do you recruit, folks that maybe only have a certain, ethical background? Tell me a little bit about how that plays out culturally at 49 Financial.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And obviously, when it was the name was first kind of talked to me about, in 2016, 17, that was one of the first things I thought of is, I love this, but how does this scale, right? If I want to have 100,000 advisors, how does it scale? Because do we want to be like some of these there's pretty large kind of very much faith forward financial firms, or do we want to take a different approach? And I think that we've matured in that and hope to continue to mature. But, what we would say is that we are very much a values-based firm that is founded upon biblical principles. And so we're careful to say that because what we want to let any client or any, future advisor know is that no matter what your background is or what your beliefs or any of those things, you're welcome here. Sure. And we believe that diversity and we believe that the coming together of different ideas and backgrounds and thoughts can only help. But our non-negotiable is our values. These 5 values, and, I see so many companies with them on walls and websites and things. But, if you asked a 49 financial advisor, what are the values? Not only would they say them, but they'd actually be able to define what they mean. And we actually make it a point that in our introductory meetings with every client, we go over our values. And I think that, for us, if you are not a values fit, whether client or, advisor alike, it's not going to be a fit.
Right.
And I think we all have seen the more time you spend if you're really wanting to be on mission with someone that just doesn't seem to align with those values, the more it ends up making the mission muddier, makes it less of speed to execution to that mission, all these things. And so, so I would say we're very intentionally careful to keep it an environment where people feel like it's a safe place no matter who you are. But we're also very bold to say 49 does come from the Bible.
Right.
And we believe in that principle to our core in personal and professional life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So while the company is just a little over a year old, you've kind of been 49 Financial for over 5 years, right? Wasn't it back in June of 15? Right. So when you think about that span of time, how has your leadership style changed? Do you approach it a little differently now than you did then? You're bigger, for one thing, but share us with some of the lessons you've learned over that period.
Oh, goodness.
Where do you start, right?
Where do you start? And I do want to make sure everyone knows you're asking also when I was 26 years old versus being 31 year old. So there's life lessons there as well of just maturity. But Brant, I could give you a lot of them, but I think that one of the things just to be vulnerable with you is, in my 20s. For some reason, I was building this big organization, was making income that I didn't ever believe I'd make at that age, being told everywhere that I'm great, all these things, and then coaching people and having this gift really to be able to really effectively inspire them to action, to do things and to feel good. And all of that led to, whether I could have called it this or not back then, really almost this feeding of this savior complex that I had as a leader. And I say that, and for listeners, what I mean by that savior complex is really that I believed subconsciously in some ways that these people needed me to save them from something or another, whether it was maturing them, whether it was to provide income for their family, whether it was this, whether it was that. And Brand, it felt good. And when you're on stages and you're getting, your bank accounts growing and your clients are loving you and your advisors, all these things, I think that for me, one of the big things 49 Financial says that we're trying to revolutionize this industry is, yes, greed is one. This industry is way too filled with it, as we all know. But the other one is ego. But here I was saying that on the stage, and without even knowing it, the most ego, in the room. And I think that as 5 years have progressed, I think that'll always be a thorn in my flesh. But I think that
has God chosen to humble you a little bit along the way?
He gave me a brain surgery, and he gave me physically. I was out for 4 months.
Oh my gosh!
And he literally plucked me away from the company, emails, texting, work, 4-month recovery to come back and see that.
That's pretty radical. That is pretty radical.
So physically, and then we had a whole rebuild, as you said, last October. And so, from a business standpoint, those two major moments have brought a level of humility and driven me to think about it. And really, what is my job? And what I've learned is, on a scale of 1 to 10, I don't think you want someone that's loyal to you in business above an 8. And I think that's controversial, but what I mean by that is what I've seen is the people that get to a 9 and 10, they see you as a savior in one way or another. They idolize you.
Right.
And if you allow that to happen, if anything goes wrong or they get a hint that you actually aren't perfect, even if you never said you were, they can actually go to a -1 on their loyalty scale.
0 to 0.
That's exactly right. And it can happen overnight, as I've seen.
Yeah.
And that's a big lesson for me.
Right. Better to have a little bit of a debit balance there, right? For those days that comes in.
That's right.
Well, that's very helpful. Thank you, Travis, for sharing that. I know that's been tough and fully recovered from the brain surgery. And when was that, by the way?
Yeah. So that was August of 2016.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a 5-year recovery. So I plan on riding a roller coaster next August because I'm allowed to, and I can play basketball again. So I've not been able to play for 5 years, which.
Oh, you're kidding me. That's got to kill you.
But I love golf.
Oh my God. There you go. There you go. You found other ways to do it.
But back to the whole lessons learned on that. I mean, identity wise, having your identity and all these things, taking away your health, taking away even basketball, which in some ways was this identity for me of being good at a sport, and all these things, and stripping them out to just say, who are you without all of the things that you claim are your identity?
Right.
And goodness, what a lesson learned.
Yeah,
and then, of course,
yeah.
like I said, he needed to do a whole nother round of lessons 4 years later with the transition of the business, which was beautiful too.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you're growing like crazy. How many total advisors are you today?
Yeah, so just over 150 today.
Wow.
And then our hope is, we're in Atlanta and Dallas and Houston and Austin, and we're opening up Arkansas actually in July of next year, and then we're finally going out to California and
Nice.
going to LA, and we're going to be doing Nashville. And we're really, as we gear in, I mean, kind of one of the goals is, here in the next 15 years, I really do feel called and led, and actually feel very bullish about it, that we are going to get to 10,000 advisors. And that would put us as, one of the largest financial firms, definitely the largest independent.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, growth in my past has been actually something negative, because it was this almost back to the ego, this look how big my company is.
Right.
Where someone says, so how big is your group got? And I used to love that question because, it was this fueling of look at this. But
the ego. Yeah,
what I've learned now is, and really even in the last just couple of years, is I would rather grow and not hit that goal I just said. If every day that I wake up, I am so full of heart that I look out at my people, we unite on the same values, and the client is getting the best thing every time. Because, Simon Sinek in the Infinite Game book, which I'm sure many listeners have read, he helps this concept of, you may not want to, as a CEO, you may not desire people to have what he defines as ethical fading. This idea that you say, hit these numbers, do these things, which for a sales organization, not bad. In fact, couldn't survive without it. But what happens when that becomes kind of the one thing, right? It becomes the thing. People can cut corners, do different things that you could never even be aware of. And it's a slow fade. It's like the Casting Crowns song, right? It happens over time. And then you wake up, and we've seen, I won't demonize any companies, but we've seen some lately, last couple of years, that then there's this toxic culture where things are not going well, or the clients actually, bad things are happening to them. And the executive suite's saying, well, how did it get here? But it was that complete focus on results, without this, hey, we need to talk about values and actually recognize those just as much. And I think that's been this interesting lesson. So as I say those big numbers, I also want to say, Brant, I'm totally okay, open-handed by those if it means that we do it the right way.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, obviously a lot of hiring, and you're probably involved in some of it. I want to talk about that next. But what do you look for? What does your organization look for when you want to making bets on these people that you invest in and hire?
Yeah, we obviously have kind of like our perfect candidate scorecard that we keep internally, right? And it's all the things, great GPA, right? Past leadership. I mean, all the things I'm sure many of the
industry experience, I think, right? I mean, do they come to you with certification and all their licenses, et cetera? Or?
They typically don't, but I would say industry desire would be kind of how we would define it if they're a college grad.
Sure.
But the longer I do it, I'll tell you, frankly, it comes down to one big thing. If someone is 22, 23 years old and they want to make it in an industry that right now I think is sitting at 9 or 10% retention, I mean, terrible. Right. It's like open up a restaurant. Like that doesn't sound so good. However, there are really, really, really great people that could just do amazing at this, but they all have one thing in common. No matter their background, no matter any of these things, we've seen at 49, the best advisors in this industry have been training, in a way, their community for a time when they would say, do you trust me? From years of seeing my actions, from years of seeing who I am, the way I've done things, would you trust meeting with me and talking about your money?
Right.
And if you've trained your community in a sense that you are that trustworthy of a person, and we have all sorts of questions we ask to get to that point, those people could be excellent at this job at a young age.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you get involved in that hiring? I mean, with so many people coming in, I'm sure you talk to a few key leaders, but do you spend as much time with them? And I guess maybe the question is, what do you focus in on? What are maybe one of those one or two questions? How do you get at that? Because that's a hard thing to identify.
Yeah. So hiring wise, I will do maybe one every month of a final interview, just to kind of get a feel of, are we still people that,
on point?
Yeah. I mean, you can't make it to a final interview at 49 unless you're awesome. And I got to make sure to do some quality checks there.
Sure.
But outside of that, it's all my leaders. I've got an amazing core of people that have been with me for now, some 5-6 years that I trust. But, I think the questions, we're really asking probably more than many interviewers for jobs about their upbringing. We got all the stuff on the resume.
Yeah.
But I want to know, like, here's a fun question, right? If we're talking to your friends' parents that you grew up with, how would they describe you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you get a lot about what they were doing when they were 17 years old. Because, the kid that says, well, I was always the one that, like, thank God you're coming with us. Thank God you're with my son.
I was the driver.
That's right. Yeah, I was the driver. That's exactly right. And then you start to gauge that, okay, well, that person, if that person then, as a grown up said, hey, you trusted me then, trust me now.
Right.
People with their money, what we've learned is, there's this interesting stat out there that a little people aren't talking about in financial services, which is the average age, depending on the stat that you look at, is mid-50s.
Wow.
Here's what no one's talking about. If 49 Financial doesn't keep hiring college grads and the industry is shying away from them, and really the industry is in a game of just hiring each other's advisors and offering them bonuses. That's what they're doing.
Right.
49 saying, no, let's go through the pain and, frankly, the lack of profit in the first few years in developing a college grad, because all of these clients, trillions of dollars in retirement accounts, are being managed right now by people that in 10 years will not be there because they will either pass away or be retired themselves.
Yeah.
Where does the industry go other than to tech if 49 doesn't step in?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's so funny. My oldest son, and we were talking about that before the podcast, but he was with me, and he works for Harley Davidson, right?
Okay.
And you think, why is a young 30-year-old mechanical engineer at Harley Davidson? Well, guess what? He's working on electric bikes. And I go, wait a minute. Harley Davidson has electric bikes? It's the noise. He goes, yeah, Dad, but baby boomers are all dying off. If they're going to have an attractive motorcycle, they've got to have something smart. I said, well, that's interesting. So the whole marketing's changing, Dad. He says the whole attraction and the hogs are just as hoggy as they were. I mean, they're beautiful bikes. I don't know if you've seen them.
Oh yeah,
but that's awesome. So true. So I commend you on that. That's just a great strategy, and they'll be serving the millennials for the rest of their lives, right? And that's what you want to do. Them. I love it. Well, Travis, this has been a pleasure. We're just about out of time, but we do always have one last question we ask all our guests, and that's kind of what career and life advice would you give to someone that maybe has their eye on their own corner office, maybe they're in a big organization today, or perhaps they want to go do something entrepreneurial like you have done. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I could give you the take a bet on yourself, take a risk, all of those things. But I think the word that I always go back to is loyalty. And that may sound odd as career advice, but the longer I've done this and the things I've gotten to see and some of the big, events we've gotten to talk about, what I've realized is loyalty should actually be defined as you don't know if you're loyal until it hurts. Anyone can say they're loyal.
Yeah.
But when it hurts, you get to see if you are or not. And I think for me, what I've seen from mentors, from peers, and then people that are mentees to me is that when people actually exhibit true loyalty, and that's rare. Everyone says they are, but you see it because it hurts and they're still with you. Stick with them no matter if you're doing something you think is just the best or the worst, because it's those people that will get you to a place where maybe it isn't the corner office, maybe that's not your calling, but it'll get you to the most fulfilling work around the best people, make you the best version of you. And I think ultimately you will be led in a direction that you're most proud of if you're doing it with those people.
Wow. Great advice. Thank you so much. Travis Jordan Penfield, founder and CEO of 49 Financial. Thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thanks, Brent.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.